All right. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. Man, we're in for a treat. I'm excited to have this conversation this evening. My name is Kelsey Maynor. I am the small business advocate for Invest Atlanta. And Invest Atlanta is the economic development arm of the city of Atlanta. We work in a variety of spaces, but tonight we're talking about our small business space and what we do for small businesses in the space of providing resources and access to capital, and really how to help your business go from surviving to thriving. And so, with our business webinars, our intention is to make sure that we're providing an opportunity for our businesses to get access to the resources that they need to grow their business and be able to ask those questions, learn how the systems and products work, and then go about using them. And so, tonight, this webinar is called Small Business Big Contracts. And we're going to be navigating federal opportunities with the SBA. So we're really excited to have this conversation tonight. I'm not sure about you, but I don't know much about government contracts and how to get those and how to navigate federal contracts and even how to talk about certifications and getting those. So I'm really excited to have it learn about that, have that conversation, ask the people that handle them all the time. How do we do this? How do we navigate this space? What is the process for getting the certifications, navigating the federal contracts? And so that's why we're here today. Now, before we get started, I do want to let you know a couple of house rules. House rules number one, yes, this webinar is being recorded. I'll say it again slowly. This webinar is being recorded. We're recording this webinar, and so it will be emailed to you tomorrow so that you can have access. You can go back and rewatch it. You can share it with somebody so that we can all not only hear it now, but get it later. The second thing is, if you have any questions, any pressing questions, hey, I'm not sure what that means. What is that? Use the Q&A section. There's a Q&A section. You can go in there and actually put in your questions. And that is where I will address them at the end. So we want to get through this brief presentation and then be able to answer everybody's questions so that we can have a dialogue. But before we get started, I would love to know who's in the room. So let's spend this time now. If you use a Q&A, kind of like a chat, tell me what's your name, the name of your business, and kind of what your business does briefly. And I would love to kind of see who we're dealing with in the room as we bring on Janelle Taylor, our amazing representative from the SBA, to come on here and kind of introduce himself while we're typing in the chat, the Q&A area, who we are and what our business is. And we'll be able to start this presentation. So, Janelle, come on in.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? I hope all is well. From my understanding, we have a standing room only crowd that's going to be here trying to receive all this good information. As Kelsey explained, my name is Janelle Taylor, and I'm one of the economic development specialists here out of the Georgia District Office. So what I'm going to do now is actually share my screen and get started with this presentation as you guys are introducing yourselves. So once again, this is me in my class photo, it looks like, in some previous days. But as I stated earlier, I'm one of two economic development specialists that works out of the Georgia District Office. And my main priority is actually going throughout the state, meeting with many of our stakeholders, whether it be different municipalities, chambers of commerce, and educating them on SBA and the services that we provide so that they can provide that information to their local communities. That's my main mission to do. And I'm also the program manager for the SBA's Thrive Emerging Leaders Program. And that is more like a street MBA program. It's a 6-month program for businesses that have at least 250 in revenue, been in business for 3 years, and also have at least one full-time employee other than themselves, and are seeing some pretty substantial growth or a pretty good growth pattern. I know last year we had 198 companies apply, and I could only select 25 to participate. But that is something that's very popular in our area. But if you want to learn more about that particular program, feel free to go to sba.gov/thrive to learn more. I always like to start with at the beginning. like all good businesses or organizations, you're only as good as your mission. So your mission should drive everything that you do. And we here at the SBA, our mission is pretty simple. You can see it because it's pretty simple. And obviously, is to maintain and strengthen the U.S. economy by helping new and existing small businesses grow and create jobs. Now, when you read into that, it shows that we have two focuses, new and existing businesses. One of the biggest misconceptions about the SBA is that we are just for early stage businesses. And we're actually very well positioned to assist existing businesses with seeing where they are and helping them strengthen up where they are so they can actually scale and even become more profitable through the different loan programs or government contracting programs, so that they can create jobs. So that's something that obviously many people did not know. So I wanted to make sure that I shared that today. Now, everything that the SBA does is going to fall into one of these four buckets. Contracting, when the SBA talks about contracting, we're talking about federal contracting specifically, because the word government contracting is thrown out there a lot. And many people don't really understand early on that government contracting starts at the city, then the county, then the state, then the federal government. So the federal government is actually the pro level of government contracting. So by the time that you really want to jump into that big, highly competitive space, you're going to be expected to have some wins at some of those other levels of government. It's not mandatory. I like to use a sports analogy where I say that, there are some people that can go from high school to the pros, and they are an exception, but there are ones and two and threes and fours, not many, not most. Most of us need that additional training in order to make it, at that high skill level. So government contracting, view it as the same way. Now, you may be that exceptional person, but you're going to be one of few that are actually going to be able to compete against the big boys, because the big boys and that say, the top 10% in this country, that's who gets 75% of the federal contracts. 75%. So the SBA is in place to actually help businesses grow so we can have a bigger impact on that federal scale. So that's where the SBA's contracting certification and programs come into play. Counseling, what we're doing right now is a form of counseling. The outreach, that we do with our partners, Invest Atlanta, and others that you'll find out along the way. Access to capital, that's a huge one. And we'll talk more about that later. Disaster assistance. If no one knew about the SBA prior to the pandemic, you know about us now. So the PPP and the EIDL and all the funding programs that happened actually came out of our disaster assistance arm. And I'll get into a little bit about that later. Now, the counseling piece, since there is only one SBA office in Georgia, and we're located in downtown Atlanta in the Peachtree Center, and we cover the entire state of Georgia. When you think about Georgia and the population, 11 million people, over 8 million of that 11 million is in Atlanta or the surrounding area. So once we get out of Atlanta, things start to thin out a little bit, but it's our responsibility to cover the entire state. So in doing all of this, we have to recruit some assistants. And if you think about the SBA, think about it in the form of an organizational chart. The SBA would be at the top of that organizational chart because we actually part of the executive arm of government, federal government. So the money comes from Congress, it comes to the SBA, and we disseminate those funds to our partners that we have pre-vetted. And one of those partners, you can see at the top here in Georgia, is the SBDC. And in Georgia, University of Georgia is the actually contract holder with the SBA to offer services because we're highly invested into that program financially. So all of the UGA extensions throughout Georgia is going to have an SBDC office in them. But they also subcontracted out to other colleges and universities like Clayton State, Kennesaw State, Georgia State. Morehouse College has the newest location. So all of those are official small business development centers that are heavily subsidized by the SBA. You have your women's business centers. We have two. We have one that actually was the Women's Business Center nationally of the year, and that was ACE. If you've never heard of ACE, it's something to take a look at. So if you go to aceloans with an S.org, that's aceloans with an S.org. They are a lender. They do counseling. They do actually three different things for the SBA. They're one of our women's business centers. They're one of our micro lenders, and they're also one of our community advantage lenders. But they also manage other loan portfolios for other organizations. So you definitely want to reach out to them and ask about not only the SBA programs, but what some of the other things that they actually manage as well. Veterans, where are the veterans at? Raise your hand. I see you. You know I don't see you. But I'm a veteran also, U.S. Air Force. Thank you for your service as always. We have some things available for the veterans on the counseling side. And the entity that actually does the outreach to the veterans that has the contract with the SBA, they're called Vector, and they're located in Warner Robins. So if you go to GAVECTR.org, I'm gonna say it again, GAVECTR.org, and you'll see the big V box sign on their website, and that is the official SBA sponsored program for the VBOC. And they have a program called Boots to Business, where they kind of walk through the whole business planning process and actually connect you with resources to help you get your plan ready for financing or just ready for implementation. At the bottom, you see the USEAC, USEAC, and that's our export assistance. Now, export assistance, look at it this way. 95% of your potential customers are located outside the United States. I'm gonna say it again. 95% of your potential customers are located outside the United States. These are the people that can help you identify the markets of where your product and service may be able to be sold. Because at the end of the day, you have to be able to sell your product and service and make it competitive, because competition is everywhere and it's global. So you have to show the value add that you can bring to other areas of the country. And believe it or not, there are a lot of countries that are looking for American products, just FYI. CDCs, Certified Development Companies, they are a very close partner with us. One of our particular lending programs is called an SBA 504. And the CDC is the only entity that can do a 504. And it's based off of a 50-40-10 model. 50% of the deal can be done by a commercial bank, 40% of the deal can be done by the CDC, and 10% of the deal the entrepreneur brings to the table. So say you got $1 million deal, 500,000 of it could be done from a commercial bank. The other 400,000, the CDC is willing to lend, which means that the entrepreneur would only have to bring $100,000 to the table to get $1 million deal done. Well, it's a very popular program, and only a CDC can do that particular program. And last but not least, SCORE. Many of you may have heard of SCORE, or maybe not. That's our mentoring group. They're a national organization, actually. There's SCORE chapters in every state in America. And here in Georgia, there are 7 chapters of SCORE, because Georgia is extremely entrepreneurial. And they are ranking 1 and 2, respectively, every year in regards to all of the growth and the counseling. So if you go to score.org and click on Request a Mentor, I highly advise you to do that. And if you're in a space where you may want to be a mentor yourself, you may want to ask about being a mentor to a lot of other folks. Now, this next slide, we're getting into the contracting information. And when I talk about contracting, meaning the federal government, it's strictly federal contracting. All of our certifications and programs only apply to federal contracts. It doesn't apply to the city, the county, the state. They can care less you have these certifications. It only applies to federal contract opportunities. So basically, if you get an 8A certification and you go to the city and say, hey, I'm 8A certified, they're gonna be like, oh, good for you. That's great. Glad to hear that you're doing that. But it's not gonna give you the advantages that it's gonna give you on the federal scale, because the federal level is where it counts with our certifications. So 8A, it is a once in a lifetime of your business program, but you have to be certified in order to be in the program. The program is for 9 years, and it's a one-time thing. And I always advise people not to be so quick to jump into 8A as soon as you start your business. You really want to wait till get some momentum and actually get some contract wins or get a subcontracting opportunity on the federal scale before you really jump into this big pool, because there are a lot of sharks, because that top 10%, they know how to make money and they've got the money to make money. So they make it very difficult to compete against them. So you really have to learn that landscape. And that's why we have these various contracting programs to help give you a price preference when you're going after contracts. And it's really a 10%. So if you're within a 10% price preference of another bid and you have an 8A, this can help you actually get that award because you are 8A certified. And they just recently went through a big court battle in regards to defining what socially disadvantaged is. So now every 8A applicant has to write a letter explaining why they are socially disadvantaged. It's not something that's automatic anymore based on your ethnicity. And that's something that really came about this past year. So just FYI. But as you can see from the slide, you have to be 51% owned, by the socially economic individual, which is a lot of different things. But if you really want to get into the weeds of the program, understand that it's going to take you about, depending on how you have all of your information, it may take you around 6 months to get 8A certified. And once you get that certification, and then your 9 year starts to click. And what that means is that now you have to go out and start hunting for contracts, but you just have a little extra ammunition, but you still have to go out and start hunting for contracts. But you really want to do your hunting, you really want to do your hunting before you get your 8A certification so you can hit the ground running. And there's some agencies that can really help you do that, like the Apex Accelerators at Georgia Tech. They're the only entity that can offer the type of service that they offer. And they're at Georgia Tech, Apex Accelerators. They're everything government contracting, outstanding resource partner that we have. The woman-owned business certification. There's a lot of women online, I'm sure, because you guys are killing it. You've been killing it for a long time. And we expect that same trend to keep going on. And with the women-owned business certification, same thing apply. You have to obviously be 51% owned by a woman. Your net worth has to be under 750,000. Your salary has to be under 350,000, and you have to have less than 6 million in total assets. There's a lot of women that can fall into that bucket, as you can imagine. So there's also an economically disadvantaged women-owned small business designation, and you can also get that. Now, when you have this particular certification, there's only certain industry codes or sectors that this applies to. It doesn't apply to everything. It's a program designed to have more impact for women contract awards in areas where they've seen not many women win awards. In the WOSB, every woman, can certify as a WOSB, but not all women can certify as an economically disadvantaged WOSB. So that's the two different things. And basically, where to learn more and to start the process to getting this certification, certify.sba.gov is where you want to go. Hub Zone, historically underutilized business zone. That's what Hub Zone stands for. And it is a census tract designation. So this is one that basically means if your business is located in a economically distressed area, whether it be in a municipal area in the city or whether it be in a rural area, there's goals that the federal government has to award companies that are located in a hub zone. So just like an 8A, in all of these certifications, you can have, if you qualify for all of them, great, you qualify for all of them. So it's not a situation where you have to pick and choose which one to go after. And that could be a great thing. So if you're a partner that can hit on all these areas, you're going to look very attractive for subcontracting opportunities from large prime contractors because they are encouraged to work with companies with these various designations. Just FYI. But all the same rules apply in regards to 50% ownership, obviously a US citizen. But the key thing about this particular certification is that at least 35% of the people you hire have to come from a hub zone. So they have to come from a distressed area. So that's something, and you have to maintain that level of employment. That's one of the key factors about that particular certification. Now, capital, access to capital. The SBA, the biggest thing that we do a lot of things that are huge and large scale as the federal government can do. Now, the SBA doesn't do any direct lending. The only time that happens is with our Office of Disaster Assistance. They have the capability to do direct lending. So when there's a hurricane, flood, wildfire, anything like that, when FEMA shows up, the SBA's disaster team shows up also. And they're able to cut checks on the spot, basically directly to help the recovery process. When COVID-19 hit, the Office of Disaster Assistance had came up with some financial programs because of the economic injury that the businesses across the United States faced. So that's a different loan programs than the SBA traditional loan programs. Otherwise, our loan programs come in the form of loan guarantees and our partnerships with our lending partners, be it a bank, be it a CDC, be it a CDFI, and some community banks that we partner with as well, where we put a guarantee on the loans to help the entrepreneur get a yes from that lender. Because without the SBA coming in and putting a guarantee on the loan from 50% to 90% of the ask, that loan won't get approved. Because what it does, it lowers the lender's risk in the event the loan doesn't get repaid. The lender can come back to the SBA and say, hey, this didn't get paid back. Can you give us our money back? And you guys can go after the lender. And in that case, we assume responsibility of the loan and we basically turn it over to the IRS for collection. That's how that works in the worst case scenario. Now understand 85% of our traditional loans, not talking about COVID, any of the COVID loans, because I'm curious what those numbers are going to look like at the end of the day. But 85% of the loans that the SBA guarantees are paid back in full. So most of the loans, don't be afraid to apply for SBA lending is what I'm saying. It's because most of those loans are paid back, which means they are fair loans. And it's not a predatory lending situation. But when you have collateral shortfalls, if you want to purchase a business, a franchise, if you're starting up, obviously the loan maturity rates can go up to 25 years. But at the end of the day, you're really going to be looking to go to your lender to start the process. Now the microloans, the closest thing that the SBA has to a grant is a microloan. I want you to look at it this way. If this is the federal government I'm talking about, that's who I work for. They are not in a position to give everyone in the United States a grant to start a business, because that's literally what would have to happen. They would have to make the grants available for everybody, and that's not something that they're willing to do. As we know, there's a lot of conversations over the budget daily. So that's one that they're not going to do, but they will from the federal government. But that doesn't mean grants are not out there in other levels of government or from the private sector, from the corporate sector. I know that the SBDC, and I'm just going to give them a quick plug, the Small Business Development Center in Kennesaw They actually have someone that's going to be talking about the grants landscape and how to go out and search for grant opportunities. Just FYI, because we heard about grants.gov. That's really more so on the nonprofits. And that's one of the things that the SBA doesn't do. We don't work with nonprofits in a normal case. Now, our disaster office has made some funds available to nonprofits because during COVID, once again, they suffered an economic injury, and there was an executive decision to reach out to those entities as well, or make the loan programs available to them. But this particular micro loan program is between 1,000 and 50,000. The average loan request is about between 12 and 15,000. And that's really usually your starting point. And it's once you have that relationship with the SBA and you're paying it back, it's a lot easier to go in and get additional funding. And the next level will go into like a community advantage loan program, which is between 50 and 350. Now, once you get past 350, now you're going to be looking at going to your lender, and now you'll be looking at something like a 7A loan guarantee, which the 7A is a guarantee and not a direct loan. There's a big misconception about that. But it goes up to 5 million. And most banks don't like lending under 350 because it's high risk and they don't make a lot on interest. So it's like, why should I lend to that need when there's a lot easier lending on higher levels? So that's why the SBA had to step up and offer and back some loans that are lower dollar amount to keep the little guy or the early stage of the beginner up and going. Now, one way to make it all easy is towards trying to find a lender. But I will tell you this, you want to make sure you know the exact dollar amount that you need, because that's a huge red flag if you don't, because it's going to show that you didn't do your research. So if you need $37,302, write down $37,302. It's a lot more impressive than just saying I need around 50 to 100,000, because there's going to be a lot of questions asked in regards to the disparity of the amount requested. And SBA lending is not like applying for a house, credit card, or something that's just strictly based off of your credit score, because SBA approvals are not just strictly based off your credit score. There are people with 800 credit scores that get denied all the time because they don't have a business plan. The three major things that they're going to be looking at is going to be that business plan, how well written it is, and also, when I'm talking about well written, I'm talking about the executive summary, the marketing plan, the competition analysis, the marketing team, the financial analysis, all of those components that make up a well thought out business plan. You need to be able to present and very much be able to articulate your value proposition in order to get finance, which leads me to that second thing. And the second thing is you as an entrepreneur. They're going to be looking at you heavily. Are you the right person to be running this venture? Can you sell this? Can you show us just from the interview process or from us talking to you that you are the person to lead this? Do you have the expertise to lead this? And if you don't, do you have that in your management team? And a lot of people don't realize your CPA is part of your management team, your lawyer, your bookkeeper, your marketing point of contact. All of those are part of your management team. And it comes across much better when you have them listed as such versus saying, it's just me. It's just me, which makes people nervous because if anything happens to you, this whole thing is shot. So they want more, or wants to see more organization, just FYI. But Lender Match is a tool that you go in, you type in what it is that you need, what you want, and within 2 days, you should get a response back from lenders that are interested in having another conversation with you about your particular venture. Now, if you don't get a response in 2 days, that's not good. That means your particular proposal is not considered bankable. So you're going to have to go back to the drawing board. Now, you remember one of those earlier slides I showed you in regards to counseling, all those different resources, whether it's SCORE, whether it's the SBDC, are available to help you prepare for that date, with that lender, so that you do provide realistic business plan and realistic ventures, moving forward. So, and I'm doing a quick plug. I've already talked about it a little bit, but disaster assistance, it's not just, when we have an international disease, respiratory disease, but every day these folks are doing a great job in regards to hurricanes, floods, wildfires, or whatever. But they spend a lot of money and they put a lot of energy into our disaster assistance. So those are the 4 buckets. And I wanted to give you guys a really good snapshot of what's going on. And I know I probably gave you a lot more information than else on these slides, which I intended to do. But if you have questions that don't get answered today, this is my email address and the phone number to our office where you can call and speak with one of our representatives to kind of help get you guys some answers. And what you see down here, the SBA.gov/GA, that is our direct website. We have a calendar of events that you can go on to where all of our events and seminars are shown and register to attend. So with that, I'm going to exit out and open this up to answer some questions.
You might as well pull that back up and go back to the certifications page. Matter of fact, go back to the first slide, 8A. Go back there.
8A? All right. Let me back it on up then, as you say. Let's see.
Yeah, but listen, if you have any questions, that you were trying to type into the chat, this is the time to do so. I'm going to be sure to go through each question to make sure that I ask the question so that we get the answer. So if you had a question about anything that was presented thus far, this is your time to put it into the chat so we can ask those questions and get those answers. Because here's the thing, man, I can't stress this enough. You have the access. We've been exposed to the programs. If you have questions, you have access. The person is standing right here, ready and willing to answer any questions you have. And then even show this contact information so we can reach out to that person with even more questions as we're going through the process. And so let's not let this fall on the deaf ears or not use this opportunity right now to make sure that we are expressing ourselves and asking those questions that are pertinent to help our businesses grow.
And just FYI,
I had questions.
Just FYI, I can answer the questions without the slides. Just FYI.
I need to see the slides so I can remember what I was looking at.
Okay.
So you were saying something about the 8A program. You were saying you said this is for bigger companies. What were you saying about that? Because I didn't want to interrupt the flow.
Now 8A is for everyone. Any business can start. I was recommending that you wait until you got some sea legs first, that you're stable. Because one of the biggest misconceptions about government contracting is like, hey, I'm gonna get this contract so I can get on my feet. You have to already be on your feet, especially when you're talking about federal contracting, because federal contracting is viewed as, all contracts are viewed as support to the soldier. Can we depend on you, in crunch time? So it's going to be very difficult for you to win an award if you don't have stability as a company, if you don't have the capacity, for that particular contract, because there are certain situations where the contract may put you out of business because you don't have the capacity to really fulfill the contract. You won the award, but then maybe a hiccup comes up, and now, okay, I don't have enough in my fund reserve, and now I can't fulfill this contract. And one of the things that you don't want is to be on the list of non-performing companies, because it's hard to come back from that. So 8A is still a benefit because it's a program designed to help socially disadvantaged businesses have some level of a competitive advantage going after the federal contract.
You said 2 things that I want to ask you about. The first one was, I got this contract and it put me out of business. Talk to me a little more about that.
That means you were not capitalized efficiently. You don't have enough reserves in the bank. And if you're waiting on, say, the federal government to pay you so that you can buy more supplies and do some things like that, there may be a lag there. So if you don't have 30 to 60 days in reserve financially, and you're waiting for that, waiting for the the check to clear, and maybe the contract is going to request, the next load or whatever, the next delivery sooner. And now you don't have the resources to deliver. And in that case, that's when you have to wave the white flag and say, you know what, I can't fulfill this contract because I just don't have the materials, the raw materials, or the capacity to fill it. That's what I mean.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then in that case, businesses have to go belly up, or they have to shut their doors.
Understood.
And
I'm gonna
those
ask
are
a
some of the things, on the dark side of government contracting. That's why, I'll be doing you and the audience a disservice if I didn't give you the big picture and let you know going in what to expect. That's why I say if you're just starting, you may want to wait. Unless, there's a specific federal contract opportunity you're going for, you want to make sure you get some wins and get some strength, get some sales behind you. Because like I said, one of the big misconceptions is that I'm gonna get this contract and I'm gonna get on my feet. Now, and that's really not the case. Now you can grow exponentially now getting a contract, but you can already be on your feet. You can already be solid and stable. A contract can definitely put you in the next stratosphere, though. But you have to come in being stable.
Understood. I see where it says small business generally must be established for a minimum of 2 years. That's just a rule of thumb.
That's just a rule of thumb. But like I said,
Got it.
that sports analogy, there are some Michael Jordans and some Kobe Bryants out there that are able to hit the ground running. Or there may be a new technology or new product or service. So in that instance, you may fall short on that 2 years, but they'll understand that at the time if it's something that's new to market. So what else you got?
The question in the chat says, I applied and submitted documentation for the women-owned small business. Can you please advise me the time frame for reviewing process? They said it replied back 7/2023.
Gotcha. You should have received a notification back. We do have someone that's a point of contact in our office for the WOSB that you can email her directly, and she has access to the database, and she can let you know where your, I guess, the status of your application is. So if you email, her name is Patrice Dozier. So it's Pat Rice .DOZIER at SBA.gov. So that's Patrice.Dozier at SBA.gov. She is our WSP point of contact. So she'll be able to give you specifically answer your question.
Thank you for that. The next question, I believe we kind of answered that question, but I'm going to ask to make sure we're clear.
Okay.
Does it matter how long your business has been in existence when it comes to applying for these certifications?
Yes, that 2 year is the threshold, understanding that the federal government is the pro level of contract. That's why they want you to be able to sustain, because we know most businesses, 50% of businesses fail in their first year. So they want to make sure that you are stable at the end of the day, and you want to be. But also, like I stated earlier, a lot of people just want to jump straight into the federal contracting when you need to sharpen your skills by going after some city contracts, some state contracts, some county contracts. You're leaving millions of dollars on the table by not doing so. FYI. Millions.
Wow. I like what you're saying. You're saying, hey, there are levels to this. And I recommend you, if you're starting off, to start off at the city, then work with the state, then work the county, and then work your way up to the federal. Because in that 2 year span, you will have built up not only cash reserves, but kind of skin in the game to know what the hiccups are. Because you don't want to hiccup on the federal government.
That's where you learn how to hunt.
I remember my question.
Yes.
You said something about the naughty list. There was a list of of businesses that haven't been able to. Is that a real list, or what were you saying about that?
It is a real list. It's a real list because they're not going to give you another contract. Not on the federal scale. That's what I said. All federal contracts are viewed as support to the soldier. You may have to dissolve that business and reinvent yourself another way and come in another way. But that particular business and that venture is not going to happen again.
Mm.
That's why
Wow.
you want to prepare yourself and sharpen your skills and make sure you have very good subcontract opportunities. You know, let some of these folks, these prime contractors, teach you, you know, how to big game hunt, basically to go after the contract so you can be the prime contractor. That's one of the most underrated ways to enter the federal contracting landscape. Subcontracting opportunities. Make sure you find out who's already providing the service or product that you provide and who currently has that contract, and you reach out to them and introduce yourself and say, hey, I can help make your life a little easier. I do the same thing. I can help you with some of this workload that you have. Do you mind us partnering? That's how it works. You have to have a government contracting strategy. You have to have a government contracting strategy. Don't just jump in and expect contracts to knock on your door. You have to have a strategic strategy. What agencies, what department, who are the prime, who are the major players, who's willing to partner with you. You have to know that going into government contract. And the Apex accelerators at Georgia Tech can really help you in that area.
Mm. Yeah, that was a question. The question is, my business has a city and state, we're city and state certified. How do we go about finding prime contractors?
There's
That
certain
public knowledge?
databases. There's certain databases that have all that information because it's part of it's FOIAable, you know, with the Freedom of Information Act makes that information available on all the contracts. And the Apex accelerators have access to those databases that can really help hone it down to just how it affects you, or basically your focus is going to be identified, so you're not just stuck on that site because it's vast if you just go directly yourself.
And so, for clarity, these certifications help you become more competitive as a subcontractor to a prime.
Yes, and you know you can also go to USspending, .gov. There's a lot of information there that you can do some research as well.
How do you become a prime?
Money and years of experience in government contracting. Because, you know, an example of a prime would be Halliburton, Lockheed Martin. Those are prime contractors. So we're talking about huge companies, you know, quite often. You're going to be, you got to be pretty successful in that atmosphere, you know, and understand $500 billion a year. And that top 10%, you know, of the businesses get 75% of that 5 billion every year. Those are the prime contractors who get those awards. So that's why you want to go and partner with them so that you can learn to compete. Now there's different scale, different levels of prime contractors. They're not all super big, but a prime contractor is someone that's going to be responsible for completing the contract. That's what makes you the prime contractor. When you are responsible for completing that contract, no matter who you have working for you, you're responsible.
A young lady asked, she said, I have received my WOSB, and my MBE certifications for my trucking business, but I have no clue how to win city, state, or any contracts or subcontracts with larger companies. Do you have any advice on where I should start to win contracts as a small business?
You are in a very difficult industry right now. Trucking, we get calls all day, every day from truckers trying to figure out what's available out there to help them win contracts. You know, because basically, unfortunately, the economic boom during COVID didn't continue in regards to all of the products and services that were bought while we were sitting at home. And now things have changed to where people are going back to work and Even Amazon has stopped, production on building any future warehouses because they really have to figure out what's going to be the new normal. So that's a very difficult industry. But I would, this is how you hunt. I'll give you guys a quick one-on-one. There's 159 counties in Georgia. Each county has its own procurement department. So that's 159 procurement departments. Now, each county has at least 3-4 cities in it. Each one of those cities has its own procurement department. So what you do is you go and you look at the map, you say, okay, you know what? I want to do business in this area. This is that government contracting strategy I was talking about. You pick out the areas you want to do business in, pick out all the counties, identify the county where the county contracts are being housed or held. It's going to be their procurement department. They come with different names, but their procurement department. You reach out, register as a vendor for them. That way you get notified of contract opportunities that fits your NAICS code, your 6-digit code that shows your particular product or service, that NAICS code, or codes plural. And then that's how you even get notified. So you rinse, wash, and repeat that in every county that you want to do business. So you reach out to the county and you reach out to each one of the cities. And that's how you cast the big net. Because one of the things that you have to know is that you have to be registered as a vendor to even bid on the contract. So that means you have to already have done your research and say, hey, the city of whatever, I'm here, I can offer this service. I want to register as a vendor. Can you please notify me of any future potential contract opportunities? And they'll type it in, they'll put you on the list. Yes, ma'am, or yes, sir. And you go from there. But now, as they say, the lack of information, we perish from a lack of information. Now you've been proactive and you're out there and you're learning how to hunt. That's why I call it that. Because that's really hitting the streets, and that's how you get the opportunity to bid. Now, once you get that bid, now you have to learn how to bid, appropriately, if you don't already know. And the Apex Accelerators have a awesome course where they talk about, where they teach you how to go through the bidding process. FYI.
That's good information. That's good information. I thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So just to reiterate for those who missed it at the beginning, do you need to have certifications that you mentioned to do business at a local level or specifically the city of Atlanta?
You have to be.
I know the answer, but I don't want to butcher it.
Hey, feel free to jump in because you're closer to the city than I am, so you may know the exact person they need to call.
Well, the question that we're asking is the certification that you were talking about on this presentation. Do you need those certifications to get contract with the city or the county?
The answer is no. As I stated earlier, all of the certification information that I'm sharing with you only applies to federal contract opportunities. It doesn't apply to city, county, state opportunities. They have their own procurement process. So if it's in the state, they have what they call the Team Georgia Marketplace. Team Georgia Marketplace. That's where all the state contracts are held. So you have to register with the Team Georgia Marketplace first in order to even bid. And they offer classes on the bidding process and some other things. So all state contracts are housed there. There's no one place where all city contracts are held. There's no one place for all county, because you think about it, that would be a huge database that would just be too big to manage. So that's why you have to be proactive and reach out to them and let them know who you are. But everything I talked about only applies to the federal level. Now there are at the state level, there's a bunch of different other certifying, if you're a woman-owned business or a manufacturer and all this, some others. So a lot of people don't know what to get certified at. And sometimes you have to pay certifications quite often. But obviously SBA, none of our certifications cost anything. $0, 0 cents. There's a lot of predatory people out there that say, hey, get me $1,100 and I'll do your 8A. You don't have to do that unless you just don't want to do the work, unless you just don't want to fill out the paperwork. That's on you, but it's actually free to register. Now, there are some other entities, I think there's 6 or 7 that have all agreed to use SBA's certifications as they will accept you as an official aid minority certification or women's certification if you have hours, but it's not something that's mandated in all 159 counties and cities. Not everyone is agreeing to that. So the only way you can find out is contact who you want to do business with first and have a conversation with them on which certification they accept.
Thank you. How does government clearance impact firms competing for awards? Like if one of my team members has clearance, does that help make us look good?
It doesn't
I don't
hurt.
know what that means.
No, I
What is
understand.
government?
There's some things require a security clearance in order to be a contractor. So, like I said, it doesn't hurt. You're going to be vetted, as an entrepreneur. That's what I was talking about earlier. Government, SBA financing, that business plan, and then you as the leader, they're going to want to know who they're doing business with. But it's not going to. Only way it's going to hinder you if something obviously comes back. Someone in the staff may not be able to participate. They can participate off-site, or they're not going to be allowed to have access to certain information. But that's all contract specific. But that does give you a competitive advantage. I believe that's the answer that you wanted at the end of the day. It will give you a competitive advantage, yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. Is there a limit to how? Oh, we're talking about the lending side now. Let me make sure I ask all the federal contract questions. Can a new business? We talked about bid on federal contract. We talked about that. Is there a difference between the levels of contracting versus military contracting?
Government contracting is across the board because there's so many federal agencies out there, and each federal agency puts all of their contracts out there. So if you go to sam.gov, you can get a good idea of what that contracting landscape looks like.
Got it. I want to make sure I answered all the contracting questions before we go into those micro loans and loans part. This lady said, if I recently moved my business to Georgia, can I use my previous state documented information and sales reports?
Yes. But understand if you're looking for funding opportunities or contract opportunities, you're gonna have to probably transcribe that to Georgia. You can walk through the door because you're showing the history, so it makes sense. But you may want to say this is the market that I'm going after, and this is what it looks like. Just makes you look more well prepared, and not only looks more well prepared, you are more prepared.
Right. And so you may mention a couple times the Apex accelerators at Georgia Tech, because they're asking, is there a mentor that can check if bidding on a particular contract is recommended or not?
Well, I would say that's the entity, the former GTPAC, former Georgia Tech Procurement Assistance Center. They just went through a rebranding, and now they're called Apex Accelerators. And they're part of a national group called APTAC. And APTAC, APTAC, they have 2 national conferences every year. The spring conference is always going to be somewhere nice and pretty, Florida, California, somewhere nice, Dallas, that has a very good economy or whatever. That's where you can learn and speak to directly with contracting officers, and they can walk you through how best to do business with them. They also have a fall conference, and it's always in Washington, D.C., because that's where the hub of government contracting happens. It's in your best interest, when you can afford it, to go to these conferences if you're really serious about getting into federal contracting, because that's where the who's who, that's where they are. And that's where people are going to learn about federal contracting and making those relationships. They're meeting prime contractors. They're meeting other people that offer the same services that they are, so they can do a joint venture together. Yeah, that's how it's done. And I know firsthand because I went to, I worked 6 years, as a PTAC doing government contracting. And some of those conferences are awesome. FYI.
Now, is getting a mentor through SCORE the same as the SBA Mentor Protege Program?
No, the SBA Mentor Protege Program is specifically for federal contracting, where you have to identify the mentor and you guys engage into a contract. And it's just the SBA that's overseeing that process. A SCORE mentor is someone that can help you paint the vision of where you want to go, help you map out your business plan, in a smart, logical way, and give you access to some resources. That's what they're there for.
Got it. So SCORE and SBDC, they do similar things?
There's always going to be some overlap in service delivery, but they do have some differences in focus, as SCORE is a mentor, not a counselor necessarily. I mean, they're a mentor / counselor. The SBDC is a service, and they have different programs, and they actually have access to certain databases of information that you really need as far as demographic information, helping you do your financial analysis and those very technical things that they can offer through the college and university. So it's a difference there, but they do, like I said, there's some overlap. There's some overlap in when you talk about entrepreneurial assistance that we all do. Even in Atlanta, we all overlap in certain areas because of the need.
Correct. Real quick, we got like 2 minutes. For microloans, how long does it take for you to get the funding from the SBA? And is there a penalty for early payment?
No, remember, the SBA doesn't do any direct financing. We have 4 micro lenders, right? We have 4 micro lenders, so you have to reach out to them. Only one of them are written, as last time I heard, only one was actually lending to new companies. The others are lending to existing businesses. And where you can go to find that list, they're listed on our website, sba.gov/GA. But you can also go to that lender match function that I explained earlier. But in less than 60 days, it's all about how well prepared you are when you walk through the door. Do you have all the documentation that they're going to request for, that they're going to need? So to learn what that application process is, you're going to have to contact the lender directly and ask them what the application process is. But do not go without a business plan. Because it's more than just your social security number that they're going to need.
So the question was, is there a limit on how many times you can go through lender match process? Is there a penalty if you go through a process more than once?
No.
All right. You have mentioned some grant.
I highly advise you to go speak, go to one of those counselors or those service providers that I talk to before, you submit and look and seek financing, because that's one of the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make. It's like, just give me the money and I'll go launch my business. And that's why half of them fail in the first year. Don't do that. That's why you have to, do that homework up front. And we're giving you a lot of people that can help you do that homework. So you're not in it by yourself. You're not in it by yourself. You just have to go in with a plan.
You had mentioned some grant program stuff early in the presentation. You had rattled off a couple things. I think you mentioned Kennesaw's SBDC.
They have a seminar that talks about how to access grants, but there are no grants available from the federal government for new business starts, and they'll tell you that directly. But depending on what you need grant funding for, nonprofits, that's their thing. There's some other entities, corporate grants. I talked about all those things out there. But just remember, Google is your friend. Google is your friend.
Last question, because we push it. 7 o'clock. Michael Westbrooks, you're lucky. I'm gonna ask this question. As a small technology servicing firm super interested in contracting, what are some things that would help us compete for an opportunity?
Subcontracting opportunities. Find out who's doing what you're doing, because you're in a highly competitive industry. Because there's IT bids everywhere, but it's highly competitive. I mean, there's a lot of people offering IT services, so you have to figure out what's your competitive advantage. Subcontracting. Find out who's doing what you're doing and seeing if you can partner with those folks, and you guys can both go after contracts. That's what I would recommend.
Got it. Well, I appreciate the time, my brother. Thank you so much for spending with us and answering all these questions. I hope everybody was paying attention. As I said at the beginning, and I'm gonna say it at the end, this webinar was recorded. It will be emailed to you. I'll be sure to make sure that if you can send this presentation, I can put that in the email as well, so that you can also go and look at those links that he had on the presentation and click them and follow through. What we want to make sure we do is say, number one, thank you so much for joining us this evening and sharing so much information. But as business owners, we want to make sure that we take this information and we do the steps that were said. I think the easiest thing we can do is just follow instructions. He said, work with the SBDC, work with SCORE, make sure you come to plan, make sure you have a business plan, make sure that you have a strategy. And so those are things we took away. So make sure that we do those things and we really take advantage of working from the city level, the county level, the state level, and then the federal level. Make sure we go after those contracts and look for those prime contractors to work with to get mentors so we can be subcontractors. Remember, you got 2 years of at least solidifying your business as a contractor and make sure that you work up the skin so that you have not only a cash reserve, but the records to show that you can complete contracts that you've been working on. So I think we took away a lot of great information. I appreciate your time. It is 7:02. I'm 2 minutes over. I appreciate you guys. We'll be here next week to talk about government contracts and how we are supposed to complete bids. So please tune in. Look out for the email for the recap. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Hey, thanks for the kind words. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.